The most feared driver in Formula One. There's a difference between respecting a driver's speed and actually fearing what he'll do to your entire season. Every driver on the grid respects Max Verstappen's pace, but when the paddock talks about Lewis Hamilton, the tone changes completely. They're not describing a fast driver anymore. They're describing someone who has broken teammates, broken title rivals, and broken team principals strategy meetings for over a decade. And right now, in red, he's doing it again. This isn't hype. This is what happens when you put a microphone in front of the people who've actually had to race him. Here's the part that should actually worry the rest of the grid. Hamilton is putting up these numbers in a Ferrari that for most of this season hasn't been the fastest car on track. He doesn't need the best machine on the grid to be the most dangerous driver in the room. Give him a car that's even close to competitive, and the numbers say the rest of the field has a serious problem on its hands. Even the people who know him best admit it. Toto Wolff, who ran Hamilton's team through 8 combined world titles, put it plainly. He'd rather not fight Hamilton for a championship, because once Lewis smells blood, the momentum becomes almost impossible to stop. That's not a fan's opinion. That's the man who sat across from him in 1,000 strategy meetings, who watched him from the inside for over a decade. So how does one driver create this much dread across 20 of the best drivers alive? It's not just raw speed. It's 3 things stacked on top of each other, and each one has already ended a career, broken a teammate, or forced a reigning champion into a mistake he never should have made. Start with the only teammate who ever beat him across a full hybrid-era season, Nico Rosberg. Rosberg didn't walk away in 2016 because he'd achieved his dream. He walked away because beating Hamilton over 21 races had cost him everything else. His routines, his downtime, his margin for error. He brought in a sleep psychologist just to manage the mental load. He reshaped his own body, shedding muscle just to shave weight off the car. And when he finally crossed the line as champion, he didn't look relieved. He looked emptied out, like something had been taken from him on the way there. 5 days later, at 31 years old, he was done. Not because he'd won, because he knew, deep down, that he couldn't survive doing it again. That's the first data point in why drivers fear him. Beating Hamilton doesn't just cost you the race, it can cost you the rest of your career. Valtteri Bottas lived a quieter version of the same nightmare for 5 seasons. Bottas has talked openly about what it does to you mentally. You put together what feels like a flawless qualifying lap. You walk into the debrief, and the data shows Hamilton found time in a corner your own engineers said had no time left to find. That's not a talent gap you can train away. That's the specific, grinding kind of pressure that breaks confidence over a season, not a single race. Quick pause. If you're new here, hit subscribe now, because this channel breaks down the psychology behind F1's biggest rivalries every single week. And if this one's already got you hooked, smash that hype button. It genuinely helps this video reach more of the grid, more fans, more views, more of this kind of deep dive content. All right, back to it. Then there's what he does to drivers who aren't even his teammate. During the 2017 and 2018 title fights, Vettel had a Ferrari capable of winning a championship, but racing Hamilton meant racing without room for a single mistake, and that exact pressure has been pointed to when explaining costly errors like Hockenheim. Fernando Alonso, a 2-time champion in his own right, has made a similar point. When Hamilton is in your mirrors on a Sunday, you don't get to make the small tactical errors other drivers get away with. You have to drive a perfect race just to stay ahead of him. Drivers have a name for this: rear-view mirror paralysis. It's not really about what happens when Hamilton actually passes you. It's what happens in the 10 laps before he does. The moment you're forced to choose between defending hard and risking a mistake or backing off and pretending it was tire management all along. Now put all 3 of those pressures into today's context. Christian Horner once said Max Verstappen was the driver the rest of the grid feared most. And for years, that was simply true. Verstappen's style forces people to yield through sheer aggression. But when Verstappen went wheel-to-wheel with Hamilton, that dynamic flipped. Hamilton was the one driver who didn't yield to it. He absorbed the pressure, adjusted his approach lap by lap, and turned the fight into something closer to a chess match than a demolition derby. That's the shift worth paying attention to right now. For years, the story was, everyone fears Max. The more accurate story this season might be that Max is one of the only drivers who doesn't fear racing Hamilton wheel to wheel, because almost everyone else on the grid already does, and Ferrari knows exactly what that means. Hamilton's toolkit, the tire management, the ERS timing, the psychological pressure applied lap after lap, doesn't depend on having the fastest car on the grid. It depends on having a car that's merely competitive. If Ferrari ever hands him one that's genuinely championship capable, every team principal on that pit wall already knows what happens next. So no, the grid doesn't fear Lewis Hamilton because he's aggressive. They fear him because he's proven it, teammate after teammate, rival after rival. Racing him doesn't just cost you a position on a Sunday. It costs you your margin for error, your confidence, and sometimes your entire career. They don't dread the car he's driving. They dread the driver inside it. The fear the grid has for Lewis Hamilton isn't one thing, it's 5 things stacked on top of each other, and that's what makes him so hard to prepare for. It's the ruthless, surgical way he overtakes, picking the exact moment a rival is weakest instead of just muscling past. It's a race IQ that turns tire and energy management into a weapon, so a car that shouldn't be fast late in a stint suddenly is. It's the psychological pressure he applies just by sitting in your mirrors, forcing a decision between defending and risking a mistake, or backing off and calling it strategy. It's a memory bank most drivers don't even know is being built. Every lift, every tire drop, every tell, until it's used against them 3 laps later. And underneath all of it is the one thing his own team has pointed to as the real engine, a phobia of losing that's bigger than his love of winning, which is exactly why he doesn't relax when he's ahead and doesn't panic when he's behind. Individually, none of these would be enough to explain the reputation. Together, they're why the grid doesn't just respect Lewis Hamilton, they brace for him. Do you think Lewis is still the driver the grid fears most right now, or has someone else already taken that title? Drop your take in the comments. I read every single one. And before you go, hit that hype button. It costs you nothing, but it tells YouTube to put this in front of more fans just like you. Subscribe to F1 Today if you want more of this every week. The psychology, the telemetry, the stuff other channels don't dig into. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you at the next Grand Prix.